Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Isaiah Warlock here. In this video, I'm going to be showing you 4 ways or 4 techniques you can use to scream. Now, yes, I have done this before. I did it in a TikTok form, which ended up being my first video to ever blow up pretty big. But I thought since it was such a big success on TikTok, I would make a YouTube version. But I'm not only going to be teaching you 4 techniques for screaming, I'm also going to try to make this essentially like a beginner's guide to screaming, because there's a ton of confusion and misinformation surrounding the different terms we use to refer to different techniques for screaming, and it's very confusing for beginners. I teach one-on-one online screaming lessons, so hit me up in the comments or to my Instagram if you want some lessons. But in my experience of doing that, I've met tons of people who are just really confused about what all the different terms mean, and different YouTubers and different content creators use different words to refer to different techniques, and it just becomes very confusing. So in this video, I'm going to attempt to have this be kind of a beginner's guide and clear up the air about what different terms mean and the different possible meanings of different words, but alongside that actually teaching you 4 different techniques for screaming. But just real quick before we jump into it, if you're not already, please consider subscribing. It's free, you can unsubscribe whenever you want, so you might as well, and it helps me out a whole lot. Also, a huge percentage of the people that watch my videos aren't actually subscribed, so if you do enjoy my videos, just don't forget to hit that subscribe button. What I'm basically going to show you is 4 different ways to make distortion with your voice, and then within that you can do highs, lows, mids, pitched screams, pitchless screams. But essentially what I'm actually teaching you is 4 different ways to make distortion. But in the future I may do a video which adds a few more types of distortion, and in the future I will probably also do a video which is going to be titled 100 ways to scream or something like that. But for now we're just going to do 4. And the 4 are fry, false chord, glottal compression, and inhale. These are the original 4 that I did in the TikTok. Now, like I said, some of these are kind of controversial as to what each of these words actually means. But basically, I'm just gonna be teaching you what I think it means from my personal experience and from my experience of teaching a ton of people already through online one-on-one lessons. So let's start out with fry. Now, fry is probably the most controversial thing out of all these. And the reason for that is fry is the most common word people use when talking about screaming, but people use it in many different ways. So I use the word fry and fry screaming to refer to any type of scream that uses vocal fry, okay? But a lot of people will tell you that that's wrong. A lot of people will tell you that in reality, fry screaming doesn't use vocal fry at all. And like I said, this is where it can get very confusing. A lot of people will do glottal compression screams and refer to that as fry, or they'll do super compressed high false chord screams and refer to that as fry. And so technically, it means whatever people use it to mean. So sure, fry could mean glottal compression and false chord and all these things put together, but then that's really confusing. That won't make any sense. So what I propose is that we just use fry to refer to screaming that utilizes vocal fry. So that's what I'm gonna teach you right now, is a scream utilizing vocal fry. And later I will teach you glottal compression, which is the other thing that people call fry. But yeah, the fry scream. What does it sound like? Okay, so you can do mids, of course, and you can do highs, and you can do lows, but in general, I would say that fry works the best with mids and highs rather than lows. So to start doing a fry scream, what you need to do is practice just doing vocal fry. And what that actually is your vocal folds being almost completely closed, and then you're just putting a bit of air in between them, and that makes a little bubbly sound. It's like pushing little air bubbles through your vocal folds. And it makes that kind of bubbly, crackly sound. So what you want to do is just practice making that sound, and then try to move it up and down in your voice, like almost in pitch, or move it up and down in tone if you want to say it that way. Okay, and once you can do that, you want to start trying to add a little bit of air to it. Make it a little bit louder, so... obviously it's still very quiet, but you're just adding a little bit of your own voice, adding a little bit more air into it. And this is where a lot of people get stuck. I get a ton of people DMing me on Instagram and commenting and stuff and saying that they try to do a fry scream, but they just can't make it loud. So what happens is they get up to this point, and they're making that kind of sound, but they just can't get it to be a loud projected scream. And the secret to doing that is actually doing a really compressed yell and doing like almost like a belt, like you're belting a really high note in your chest voice. And then you're gonna merge that with the fry. You're gonna put the fry on top of that as an effect. Like you're putting distortion on a guitar, it's that for your voice. So how do you do a compressed yell? Well, I would suggest starting out by saying like, hey, but really fast in like a burst of air. Hey, and you wanna make sure that your abs and your diaphragm are compressing every time you say that. Hey, hey. Then what you wanna do is just make that exact same sound, but hold it out for a little bit longer. Hey! Okay, just like that. So nothing crazy, but now what you can do is you can take that kind of yell and add distortion to it, add the fry to it. Hey! So it's just a matter of finding that middle ground between yelling and doing that little fry sound. And that's basically it. That's how you do a fry scream. And with practice, you know, you'll be able to just change the pitch, change the tone, do highs, do mids, all of that. But that'll all come with time. And fry screaming honestly takes a ton of practice. So don't get discouraged if it's taking you a long time to actually get it done. But if you want something that you can learn a little bit faster and it's going to be a little easier starting out, these next screams are going to be a lot better. And next, we're going to talk about maybe the most common type of scream that you'll hear about. It's honestly maybe a tie between fry and false chord, but now we're going to talk about false chord. So what is false chord anatomically? Well, essentially you have your vocal folds in your voice box in here, right? And then you're going to have your false chords or your false folds above them. Okay, and there's like these pieces of cartilage which are kind of like vocal folds. By the way, your vocal folds are what you use to speak. When you sing, when you speak, they're vibrating and they're creating a tone. But your false chords or your false folds can do essentially the same thing. They can create tones, for example, with throat singing, but they can also create distortion, and that's what we want. But the difference here between false chord and fry is that once you have the distortion, you don't want to add your own voice into it, because if you have your vocal folds and your false folds kind of going at the same time, that can cause vocal slamming, and that's when your vocal cords or your vocal folds get slammed together, and that can create some problems. You're going to lose your voice really fast. You're going to potentially have some injuries to your voice as well. So what's really important here is that when we're doing false chord, we're adding air to make it louder, not the actual voice. Not our actual voice. We're not yelling. We're doing just the distortion. We're adding more air to project it a little. So the way to get started doing the false chord distortion is to make just some small sounds that kind of activate your false folds. And I like to get started by clearing my throat like this. Now this is again is a kind of something that's kind of controversial, because some people will tell you that this is not good for you, that you shouldn't clear your throat. If you're doing it correctly, it shouldn't hurt you. What I was saying before was that if you get your vocal folds engaged, you're gonna run into problems. So a lot of people are going to engage your vocal folds when clearing your throat or when doing some of these exercises, but there's no other way around it. You're gonna have to do that, and you probably are gonna experience a little bit of discomfort, and you're gonna lose your voice a little bit, but you're gonna be okay. The important thing is once you get going and once you get practicing all the time, that you're doing it with proper technique. But in the beginning, of course, you're not gonna be able to do completely proper technique. So like I was saying, you wanna clear your throat, right? And that sound, that rumbly sound, is false chord. So then you just want to drag out that sound, do it for a little bit longer. Okay, and that's false chord, but my mouth is closed, and that's actually okay. You can start by doing it with your mouth closed because there's less airflow and it's a lot easier to control. Next, what you can try to do is make like a moo sound, like a cow. Moo. So you can see how I'm starting with my mouth closed and I'm opening it. So once you're opening it, of course, then you're starting to get like a growl kind of sound. Now, false chord, you know, traditionally is used for more growling and more lows kind of sounds. Yes, you can do mids and more low mids. Highs, you can do them. False chord highs are actually pretty difficult to do, and honestly, I don't really like the sound of a false chord high. I much prefer the sound of a glottal compression high or a fry high, and that's something that you'll see pretty commonly throughout the screaming world. A ton of screamers will do false chord lows and fry highs. That's kind of the standard, but of course, some people are going to argue, oh, no, you should do only false chord highs, or you can do fry lows, blah, blah. Yeah. You can do anything. Like everybody's voice is different, so everybody has their different ways of doing things. But in general, false chord is going to work better, in my opinion, with growls and low mids to, you know, regular mids. But nonetheless, once you can make that sound, so you can make it a little bit louder, but again, make sure you're just adding air. So what you can do is put your throat in the position as if you're yawning. So when if you pretend like you're yawning, you'll actually feel everything in your throat kind of open up. And that's what you want. You want your vocal folds to open up. And that's what happens when you yawn. And that allows you to add more air without engaging your vocal folds and causing any damage. So go like this. And now do the false chord sound. Okay, and then you can experiment by moving your tongue around. You can get really like ultra lows by doing like tunnel throat and stuff like that. So yeah, once you got that sound down, it's just a matter of experimenting, practicing. And honestly, false chord is probably the easiest thing to start out doing. Like most people can make the sound straight off the bat, so it shouldn't be too difficult. Okay, now we're gonna move on to the next type of distortion, which is glottal compression. Now, right now, glottal compression is definitely my favorite kind of distortion, just because glottal compression is so versatile. You can do highs, mids, lows, but it's really good for screaming. Like if you want to sound like Ollie Sykes from Bring Me the Horizon, Chester Bennington from Linkin Park, like doing that gravelly, graspy kind of singing. Glottal compression is perfect for that, but you can also do really, really nice screams with it. So basically I use glottal compression for everything, but if I'm doing layers and stuff, I'll add some of the other types. But here's how to do it. And like I said, some people do glottal compression screams and say that it's fry. So if it sounds familiar and you're thinking like, oh, somebody else did that and they called it fry, yeah, that happens. But like I said, I think it's just easier if we use fry to mean anything that uses vocal fry, and we use glottal compression to mean glottal compression. But what does glottal compression mean? Well, basically you're compressing the air in your lungs, right? Compressing it like an air tank, and then you're releasing air from your body at a very high pressure, and this rattles around your epiglottis. Okay, your epiglottis is this little piece of cartilage. It covers your esophagus when you're breathing, and then it covers your larynx when you're swallowing. But releasing air at this super high pressure is gonna kind of rattle the epiglottis and cause some distortion. So that's why it's called glottal compression. And glottal compression at a small scale sounds like this. Okay, so it sounds kind of similar to fry. And there's a few ways to get started doing glottal compression. The first and the probably easiest way is the 3-step thing that I show in like all my videos. The 3 steps are: you take a deep breath, you shut off your vocal folds, and the way you do that is by making this sound. Okay, like you're picking up a really big weight. And it's also what you do when you say uh-oh, uh-oh, you see? Okay, so it's like that. So you take a deep breath, shut your vocal folds, and then you're gonna push. Okay, you're gonna almost do like a yell, but basically just push air through. But make sure you keep them closed. So that feeling when you go like this, that is you closing off your vocal folds, and you want to keep them pretty tightly closed. Okay, and then push with your abs and your diaphragm to make a noise. And that air in your lungs is going to be super compressed, and that's what's going to make the distortion from your epiglottis. So breathe in, shut off, push. Okay, so that's kind of the start of the sound. So once you can do that, you can make quiet sounds with it. But then, of course, you can do screams with it. You can do mid screams like that, or high screams, or even low screams. And you can do pitchless stuff, which is basically what I've been doing the whole time, or you can add a bit more of that yell sound and get it more of a pitch sound for screaming and stuff like that. Yeah! I don't know, like whatever you're trying to do, you can add that. You can add more of your voice, yeah, and have it be more of a pitched kind of raspy singing, or just add more distortion, yeah, and have it be a straight up scream. Okay, now is the final thing, and this is inhale screaming. Now, a lot of people, and this is another thing that's kind of controversial, because a lot of people will say that inhale screaming is really bad for you and that it's going to cause you health problems. And from my research and from my experience, I've been doing it for a few years, and I know a few people who've been doing it for a few years, and nobody that I know has had any problems with it. It's not caused any problems for me. But from my research, mainly it's going to cause problems if you have a pre-existing lung condition. So if you have pneumonia or probably like asthma or things like that, then doing inhale screams, I would suggest not to do them, of course, because that probably is going to cause you problems. So, practicing it in your bedroom or doing a few songs with it probably isn't going to hurt you, but, do it with caution. I'm not, the overall expert in inhale screaming and its effects on the human body. So don't completely take my word for it. You know, do your own research and do it at your own risk. Definitely don't do it if you have a pre-existing lung or breathing problem. But a lot of people want to learn how to do it. A lot of people ask me how to do it. So I'll show you how to do it if you want to know. And so yeah, it's inhale. All the other screams are, of course, exhale. Your air is going from inside your body to outside your body, and that's making the noise. But in inhale, air is going into your lungs, and that's what's making the noise. But it's still the same principle, right? In all of these types of screams, you're constricting the airflow somewhere and causing some kind of distortion with your body. So what you want to do is start by, obviously, inhaling. But then try to kind of constrict the airflow in your throat, pretty similar to glottal compression, until you get this kind of sound. So you're kind of making a tone with your voice while inhaling, but most people can pretty much do that already. So just try to inhale and make that kind of sound. What's going to happen is you're going to start to get the distortion at a really low place, like in a growl, and then you can build it up and go higher from there. So what you want to do is when you're making that sound, make it kind of a low sound, okay? Put your mouth and your throat in the posture to make like a lower tone sound. Like that, right? Now all you want to do is just suck even harder. Suck the air in pretty hard until you start to get a little bit of a crackly kind of sound, but still making it pretty low. And you can even put your mouth like this. Like that, ooh. And that constricts the airflow. And like I said, the less the airflow you have, the much easier it is to control everything that's going on. But there it is. There's that kind of crackly, weird sound. And just the more you practice it, the more control you're going to get over that sound. And this is something that the posture of your tongue and your mouth and everything really change the sound. But yeah, this is another one kind of similar to fry, and technically this is backwards fry. People refer to this as backwards fry as well, because it is your actual vocal folds that are making the sound. It's that bubbly sound, but just air going back through it and causing little bubble sounds. Okay, so that is the video. That is 4 ways to scream. So I hope some of my explanations helped clear some things up as far as the different techniques for screaming. If you have any further questions, let me know in the comments. And as I said, I do teach one-on-one online screaming lessons. So if you want some lessons, tell me in the comments, or DM me to my Instagram. Here is my Instagram, by the way. It's right there. Oh yeah, just go follow me and DM me there, and I will get you set up with some lessons. And if you would like to support me and my music and the channels that I do, you can do so through Patreon. Here's my Patreon. That's going to be a link in the description, so you can go check that out and check out my tiers and everything. And if you want to go check that out, you can do so. Link in the description. And if you want to cop some Isaiah Warlock merch, you can also do that. There's going to be a link in the description to check out my merch store as well, if you would like to do so. But yeah, that's the video. As I said, do not forget to subscribe. I will see you in the next video. I'm Isaiah Warlock, and goodbye.